Maybe seated. I don't know if you can remember when you were a kid and you had, maybe you had a little bit of an allowance. I always had a small allowance. I'd try to save it up for things. But remember when you would finally get a big chunk of money? Maybe you just saved up all the 10s and 20s you got in your birthday cards or whatever, and now you suddenly had what seemed to you to be a big chunk of change. What did you think of doing with it? What was your first thought as a kid, now that I got this big chunk of change? Of course, we know the answer to that. It was, what is the big toy that you've always wanted? Right? I want to get those rare Pokemon cards, I want to get the Charizard Zide that beats the Zorg, or whatever. I'm making that up. I want those shoes. I want that game console, right? And then your parents step in and they say, why don't you think about your choices a little bit here with this money? Be wise. Don't spend it all in one place, they'll say. And when they say that, what does your kid hear? You're no fun. You don't want me to have any fun. You're boring. Putting half the money into a savings account in the bank to accrue interest for a rainy day, that's boring. I could use that money and buy Alien Death Kill Laser Gore Blaster 5. And so, what do? You go online and you spend it all on that version of the game, and your mom stops and asks you, why are you spending all your money on that? Now, she might normally recommend things. Do this, don't do that. But this time, she just asks, why are you spending all your money on that? And you're a little startled, because there's a little bit of tone to it, right? It's not purely an inquisitive question. And she isn't asking, of course, because she doesn't know. She knows you love Alien Death Kill Gore Blasters Laser 5. She knows you've been chomping at the bit for this. And she knows why you like it. Who doesn't want to go around and blow up, alien species that can't talk and are all bad, and so you don't have to feel bad about blowing them up, You don't get done with the end of the day and go, I wonder if the aliens were just hungry and misunderstood. That's not how those games work, right? There's no moral ambiguity. But anyway, she knows you like blowing them up. And your mom knows the game gives you a rush, and she knows there's excitement in it, and she knows that you're dying to get to that 5th level where you get to take on the blue aliens and the Zorg ships. But she's also seen a few winters, and she's seen games come and go, and she knows that you might have a class trip coming up, and you might do something more productive with your money. So she drops that question. Why are you spending your money on that? She isn't telling you no. She's getting you to think about your decision. Think about your motives and your feelings, behind wanting to spend your money on that one thing. She could tell you the answers, but would you listen if she just told you? Part of growing up, I think, is learning to think about actions and consequences, thinking about practical concerns, long-term needs, learning to live without and delay gratification. We don't all do that, even as grown-ups, Sometimes we get older, we fall into a big chunk of money, and the new toy we buy is just a different new toy, right? Instead of buying that new video game, we buy a new truck or something, when the old one works perfectly fine. So the question is one that's good to kind of keep asking your whole life. And it's a question that comes up even in the Scriptures. It starts out, of course, in our Bible. You go back to the beginning, you get the law, right? God gives a lot of rules about what to do, what to spend money on, what to wear, what to eat, loans, forgiveness of loans, farming rules. There's 623 rules in those first 5 books of the Bible. God bless the rabbis for counting all of them and factoring in all the duplicates. God bless them. 623 rules God gives. And when you read the Bible, though, and you get to the next books, what do you find? Book after book after book of the people breaking all those 623 rules, finding loopholes, finding workarounds. You know, they looked at the rules as imposed upon them, while deep down their hearts were in another place. And so, essentially, what started out as a religion of laws and rules, as you start reading through the prophets, turns more and more into a religion of internal guidance through the Spirit. So God kind of goes from telling you what you can and can't do to looking you in the face and asking you, is this really what you want to be doing? I mean, that's what Isaiah says, literally, Isaiah 55:2. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your earnings for that which does not satisfy? Why? Again, God knows the answer, but God wants us to think about it. So we'll make it our decision that we own and that we understand, and it's not just, I'm doing this because I'll get punished if I don't. God wants us to use our brains He gave us to be aware of ourselves, our spending habits, our motivations behind our spending habits. Because God knows what everyone teaches you in day one of marketing school, that our spending choices are not usually guided by cold, rational calculations, but they're emotionally based about fulfilling unmet needs. The felt need, as they call it. Find the felt need. It doesn't matter if they need it and if they don't feel like they need it. They have to feel like they need it. And it doesn't matter if they actually need it, if they feel like they need it, right? You don't really need that brand new truck. The old one works fine. Your mechanic says it's good for another $50,000, but you feel like you need it, right? They don't sell cars by talking about how efficiently they will get you to your suburban office. They sell them to you by promising you what? You will look manly, or you'll go fast. Or think about what they'll say about you if you don't get it. Do you remember that ad? I'm still bitter about this, and it's probably 25 years ago. There was an ad they used to run where there was a guy in the gym, and he's sitting there and he's lifting with all these other guys, and then suddenly over the speaker, you can hear this woman's voice go, "The person with the tan minivan, your lights are on. The person with the tan minivan, please, you need to shut off your lights." And then the guy is sitting there looking around, afraid to put down his weights and shut off his lights because he doesn't want the other guys in the gym to laugh at him for driving a tan minivan. And it drives me nuts as somebody who's owned 3 minivans. They're very efficient. You can put a lot of stuff in them. They have more cargo space than most pickups. You know? And those sliding doors, you can get the kids in and out of those sliding doors. The fold-down back seats, they're wonderfully engineered. But because of that stupid ad, you end up with people buying these giant trucks and then putting these giant cabs on them when they're just going to drive to the soccer game just like me. But they don't want the guys to laugh at them. They don't want to be the guy with the tan minivan. So they spend money they don't need. That's how marketing works, right? If you're unsatisfied in some area of your life, if there's some hole, you try to use spending to fill that hole. And coming up to someone and saying, don't spend that, it doesn't really solve it. Because telling you not to fill your hole in yourself with that spending doesn't solve the problem of that absence in yourself. It's just a way, and so you'll find a way to rationalize, to break the law, to get around it, because it doesn't make the craving go away. You need to get to the core of what's happening and see what's missing that you're trying to fill with the spending and find a way that is more permanent and fulfilling in the long run. But of course, the hard part of that is that means you have to sit down and you have to hold up that proverbial mirror to yourself and you have to look into it and see where you feel empty and missing and vulnerable and weak and afraid. It means admitting that you really are afraid that the guys at the bar are going to mock you for your tan minivan. It means admitting that you're kind of lonely and you're comforting yourself with fatty food, or that you're bored and you lack purpose and so you go down to the casino and sit and turn the machines. I remember the first time I went to Vegas. Well, actually, the second time I went to Vegas. Vegas used to be in my old synod, so I would ironically go to Las Vegas for church functions. I remember one time I had to go to Las Vegas for a sexual boundaries training, and everybody had a good giggle about that one. But I used to go to Vegas, and I remember the first time I stayed in one of these casinos, and you know how the marketing goes, right? It's always buff, young, beautiful people, right? And they're sipping mojitos, or it's, you know, and everybody's having a great time, or it's what, James Bond, right? And he's got his tuxedo, and there's all these beautiful, glamorous people, and he's like, I like to live dangerously, ha ha, and he throws stuff. And so I walked around the floor of the casino. I didn't see any of that. You know what I saw? People my parents' age, sitting at machines, throwing money in. You don't even throw quarters in anymore, right? It's all just scanned with a card. Ting, 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 ting. Ting, 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 ting. And just these almost like flat affects, almost like, it was like zombie faces, and I'm going, kids' college education, ding, 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 ding. You know, down payment on your grandkid's house, ding, 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 ding. You know, Brookdale, ding, ding. Everybody ends up having to pay the Brookdale sooner or later, right? And I'm looking at this, and I thought, this doesn't look glamorous or fun. And I realized something's getting met there. There's some need. And that's the thing. You know, I'm not one of these old style prudish preachers that says that all recreation and fun is bad and that we should never spend money on fun things. You know, gambling is an addictive behavior, and it's driven by filling unmet needs. And we're really better off addressing the needs in ourselves than just trying to say, don't do it, right? It's a lot harder to say, you know, I really do feel kind of disconnected and I don't have a lot of friends and social events, so I'm just going to throw money at a machine. That doesn't lift you up. See, God is asking us this question, putting it to us fairly simply. Why are you spending your money on things that leave you empty? And it's not like they're not fun, they just don't satisfy you in the long run. And nobody gets addicted to a loaf of bread, no matter how good this rosemary and olive oil. Safeway didn't have like the 12-grain fresh ready this morning, so rosemary and olive oil it is. Nobody gets addicted to this stuff, even though it's really good. Should I put out a coffee hour? Do we have coffee hour? Ooh. In America today, I think we are more disconnected from family and friends. We have less community, fewer meaningful long-term relationships than we used to in past generations. And we have more money to spend on shallow things and shallow solutions. But the solutions to the real deep solutions to our problems, our culture is kind of suspicious of them and badmouths them sometimes. You know, I think as a culture we're a little bit nervous about deep, committed relationships and sacrifice and sharing because we're kind of told that long-term commitments and organizations and institutions are oppressive and they stifle your individuality. Stay disconnected and free. And we live in a world where we've got more information to books for growth and reflection, and what do? We're scrolling through hot takes rather than reading a deep and multifaceted analysis. We know why we spend money on things that don't satisfy. We just don't like to admit it, because admitting it means looking at the lack and taking the long road to fill with the things that God gives us to satisfy. It means sitting down and pausing just long enough before you make that decision to look around and ask that same question that God asks. Why do you spend your money on that which is not bread and your earnings on that which does not satisfy? This is a spiritual issue. Because a godly way of living is not a way of being rushed or pressured, but it's being calm in the moment. Being in God's Spirit, letting God's Spirit dwell in you, and finding the inexpressible joy that makes pausing and reflecting and thinking and smelling the flowers normal and natural. So God does not want us, I really do believe, God does not intend for us to live as Spartans, always perpetually deprived of fun, endlessly spare, always trying to see how little enjoyment we can get so that we can get into heaven. I don't think that's what the prophet is talking about. If he did, then why would God be saying, come and I will give you that which will satisfy? God wants us satisfied. But he says in answer to his own question here in Isaiah, he says, listen carefully to me, and eat what is good. Delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear. Listen that you may live. God is offering us the food that fills, in a life that fills, that has a purpose in serving and loving and building up in community. And that's the investment worth making with the money that will satisfy you like the bread. Amen.